Okay, looks like the stream is live. Let's make sure. Let's check right over here. So we've already got somebody sitting waiting on the stream. So good morning. Thanks for stopping in as usual. Uh, for those of you new to the channel, my name is Rich Charpentier, and we spend a lot of time talking about drones and building your small drone business. Um, let's see. Today is November 30th, so we're at the end of the month. The Thanksgiving holiday here in the States is over. And I gotta say, awesome weekend. So I actually got some rest and relaxation. And so before we talk about today's topic, I just wanted to say if you are building your small drone business or any other small business for that matter, sometimes it can get overwhelming. I mean, you've got a lot of different hats that you're wearing to start building up your business, even if you're working with other people as well. It takes time to grow a small business. And sometimes we get lost in that, especially me. I'm always thinking of the next way to do things and the next client coming up. And that dominates a lot of my thought during the day, even while I'm working on other client projects. So this Thanksgiving weekend, I decided to really take a step back and not spend too much time on the computer, not spend too much time worrying about who that next client is, and just enjoy the weekend. So I gotta say, this has been the most relaxing weekend I've had in quite some time. So I'm feeling refreshed and ready to get back into some of the projects that we've got going on into the end of 2020. So, all right, we've got a couple of people who've popped on. So, good morning and welcome to the channel as always. Thanks for stopping in, everybody. So, today I wanted to talk about what we can do with some bad photos. So I actually purposefully went out yesterday and I decided to break out the Mavic Pro and just fly it around the neighborhood and get some still photos, but get the photos at a bad time of day. We all know, photographers love dawn and dusk for, amazing sunrises and sunsets and that really gorgeous golden hour imagery that we can produce at sunrise and sunset. But when we're doing work for our clients with our drones, whether it's real estate or modeling or, doing video time-lapse flight paths, we don't always have the best light to work with. Sometimes we have to be out in the middle of the day for our customers. And then we're competing with super bright sunlight, really drab scenes. As you can see the background here, I didn't do anything to make this more bland. This is as bland as it was coming out. And I wanted to talk about Photoshop today because it's going to lead into a conversation about general editing and some other programs out there. But so the latest version of Photoshop is out. I don't really usually comment on that. There's a lot of channels that will show you all the ins and outs of Photoshop. I am going to start doing some more editing drone images on this channel and on the live streams now and then, just to give people ideas of how well they can improve things. But so I flew the drone yesterday at a bad time of day and I got some wonderfully awful images. So first off, everything that I was doing, I was shooting in RAW yesterday. So, and using the Mavic Pro, not the Mavic 2 Pro. So I had no control over aperture because it's a fixed aperture. And, so it's hard to get the exposure that you want when you've got one of your key components of exposure locked out to you, that being the aperture. But let's take a look at the first one of the neighborhood. Number one, you can see where the roof had been patched at some point in time. So, which explains some of the cracks up front here. But so this was shot just, super bland image, just a really quick focus on it, and shot in RAW. As you can see, it's a .dng file. That's what comes out of my Mavic Pro. And for those of you new to the channel, if you see me looking over regularly, I'm just making sure no one's made any comments or had any questions in the live chat. And if they do have questions or comments, I will be looking over regularly to make sure that, that I answer your questions in a timely fashion. So right now we're in Lightroom, and so normally when I'm just doing photography, my images get loaded into Lightroom, and then if I want to do some heavier end editing, I go from Lightroom into Photoshop, which we're going to do as well. But as you can see, this is just a blown out, typical Arizona day. So a lot of the times in Arizona, we don't have monsoonal clouds or anything. So we've got this flat blue sky sometimes that creates some really harsh shadows and can really wash things out. So my first step normally, just to give myself an idea of, even if do I want to use this image? Is this image of value or not? I bring it into Lightroom first, and I'll do some minor edits in Lightroom. And if I like what I have, I'll stay with that. But if I need to do more, I can always jump over to Photoshop. And like I said, this is the latest version of Lightroom and Photoshop. And there's a lot of new tools in Photoshop that are pretty exciting. Tools that help do things that I've always had to do manually before. So first off, our histogram is way to the bright side. One of the things I'm going to do is we're going to bring the highlights down. I'm going to bring them down 100% because we do have a lot of faded out areas. And the next item that I'm going to do actually is just jump on down to the clarity. Usually when I'm doing outdoor work, about plus 30 will do it. I'm also pulling up the dehaze filter, which right away you can see things are richened up a little bit, so that's looking a little nicer already. It's still not a fantastic photo. This isn't something that I would be handing off to a realtor or a client unless I did some more work on it. So we could also bring the vibrance up just a little bit more because that's a little more like what things look like here during the fall in Arizona. So we got the weeping willow that's still dropping some of its leaves, but they were a nice golden color at the time that I was out flying. So in just a couple of simple steps, dropping highlights, pushing clarity up slightly, dehaze, and vibrance, I've got something that might land on my website as an example image. So once again, still not a perfect image, but a little better than it was. Let's take a look at the difference before and after. I'm just going to hit the tab key here. And so in Lightroom, you can quickly pull up your before and afters to give yourself a feel for, how much have we changed this from the original. So a little bit of change. Oh, and I just saw something over. Okay, not a comment, never mind. I'm going to hit the G key here just to get myself back to that image. So we've made some minor edits, and now I'm going to bring you into Adobe's Photoshop. Now this might take a few moments as my machine always feels a little overloaded running Lightroom, Photoshop, and OBS at the same time. But let's go to Edit in Photoshop. Now, I know there's a lot of other software packages out there for photo editing. I've had people asking on channel regularly, what about Affinity Photo? What about Luminar, On1, Topaz, all these different editors and enhancers? Yes, indeed, there are a lot of them out there, and they offer a lot of amazing tools. And so does Photoshop. So oftentimes people are getting in touch with me saying, hey, I don't want to do the Adobe subscription plan. I understand that to a degree, but as people are looking at other software packages out there, the subscription plan isn't a break the bank kind of a thing if you're building your drone business. I mean, let's face it, it's $10 a month for Lightroom and Photoshop together. And that's a powerful combination of applications right there. So if you're going to be doing a lot of still imaging for clients, maybe you're going to be doing real estate, you might want a couple of different software packages for editing and enhancing, and that's fine. But Adobe keeps pace with a lot of the competitors out there, and some of the competitors do plugins to Adobe too, so you can go from Lightroom into Luminar or Aurora Hdr or whatever the other tools are that you're interested in using. Usually they tie back into some of Adobe's applications. But what blew me away recently, because when I've done sky replacements and composite photos, I always have to do the selection by hand or using the wand tool. But now they've added in, as well as so many other companies have, they've added in a sky replacement option. So like I said, this is pretty drab right now, and beautiful Arizona days usually have cool puffy clouds, and those days usually happen during monsoon season. So they have their new sky replacement over on the edit. So you just go over to edit, drop down to sky replacement, and you can import your own skies as well, but Adobe does give you a selection of skies. But look how much the feel of this image just changed with just that sky replacement. And it was so easy. It was a one click for me. Now, there are a lot of other applications out there offering sky replacements and artificial intelligence for improving your images. And, every one of them has their merits. But I think Adobe is keeping up with some of that competition. Maybe they're a little behind some of their competitors, but they're getting this involved as well. You have to also keep in mind that Adobe Photoshop is an extremely powerful application that offers a lot more than just the photo editing we're doing right now. We have text layers, we have all the different tools that go along with Photoshop's layers. And when you take a look at it, it really is a one-stop shop for improving images for your clients, for whatever kind of work it is you're doing. I'm just going to go ahead in here and we're just going to grab the drop down. So they already have some samples, but you can import your own. And over the years, I've collected some amazing monsoonal images over time. So with that in mind, I've got some great skies that I could use in a variety of photos. So we've got some lighter clouds in here. I'm going to go ahead and select this lighter one really quick. Since it still was kind of a drab and a more blown out flat day, these clouds might represent that a little better. But you can also scroll on down. Now, a sunset photo is not really going to go well with this. I've got so many images that have the same color scheme. As you can see, it did change the sky immensely. And it also altered the foreground just a little bit, but let's go ahead in here and say okay to it. Now, what it's doing, if you're not super familiar with Adobe Photoshop, is it's created some additional layers. So it actually did a adjustment for the foreground. So let's go ahead, and we've got the little I button here. And you can see that it did make an adjustment with the foreground to line up a little better as far as colors go with that sky. And you could actually go in here and change the foreground colors even more if you wanted to. So I can open that layer up, and in here I can actually use curves to change things even further. So there are multiple ways to come in here, and maybe let's say, for an evening shot, for a sunset shot, I might want to warm up the foreground even more. So I could come in and use curves, or I could use a variety of other tools, all the different adjustment layers, brightness and contrast, levels, curves. We could also work on the vibrance in areas, or we could select the foreground area not touching the sky, and we could actually go in and color correct that foreground area as well. What I'm going to do here is select the layers that were created by the adjustment here of, let's go back, where is it? Sky replacement. So I can jump back to the sky replacement again and do something else, but that full sky replacement was this group right here, and then 1, 2, 3 layers that it's created. I'm going to go ahead and delete those layers to bring us right back to our original. Don't forget, Photoshop and Lightroom, you can always go back through your history. So if you've made some changes and made changes while you're experimenting, you can easily get back to the original or reset things. So I'm going to go back over to that sky replacement one more time, and we're going to go with the more realistic sky replacements that we were looking at, not this crazy sunset. Still, that is really awesome at how well it actually did with the foreground as well. Let's go ahead and pick that more bland sky again. And yeah, so that very much feels to me like that could fit with the day. So from here, you can go forward and tweak things more. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go ahead and hit Command S to save this image back into Lightroom. And this image is getting saved as a TIFF file so that I do have the layers available to me. So if I wanted to go back and edit that some more afterward, I absolutely can. So let's close that one and let's pull up Lightroom. And there we have it. That Lightroom sky has actually been added in here. I'm going to hit the G key just to look at the grid, and then we're going to look at these two images side by side. So the adjustments that I did are on the right hand side. So this is the original image with some minor adjustments, some minor edits, still with that flat sky. And then we exported over to Photoshop And here's what we've got. Now what I could do here, because it's still kind of a bland photo, isn't it? So we could go back into the develop module and we could continue doing a little more tweaking to this one. So taking a look at it again, maybe I want to drop those highlights down again. Now that's the TIFF, so that darkened up the skies there just a little bit. And maybe we would actually like to put a little more vibrance. I hate it when it's overdone. You know, people will come in and they'll just hit the saturation or vibrance sliders to 100%. That's never representative of what you saw at the time. You know, oversaturated, it kind of hurts my feelings. But so we've got something usable and passable for a blog post. Once again, I don't think that I would be bringing this one to a customer. I also don't think I would be shooting at this time of day if I could avoid it at all. I actually would have shot later in the day for this one. But I specifically did this to generate a couple of bland, boring photos for us to work with. All right, so I'm hitting the G key and I'm just going to take a second look at this neighborhood. And I want to have a little fun with this one. So years ago when I was just doing my regular still photography, I had some fun doing miniatures, you know, making things look like a miniaturized model. And that is another tool that's in Photoshop. They have got a tilt shift effect. And along with that tilt shift effect, that's a huge time saver because I used to have to do that by hand with a couple of blurs. But every time that someone comes up with an interesting or fun thing to do with photos, usually Photoshop will find a way to help make it easier on you to create those effects. So I'm just going to bring the tabs in. We're going to go over and hit the develop because what I want to do with this neighborhood is give it a kind of a cool miniaturized effect. But before that, once again, since we get that flat drab sky and look at our histograms, just horrible all the way over to, you know, leaning toward overexposed. By the way, I would rather overexpose than underexpose when it comes to editing. If you're a little overexposed, bringing things back is easier than if you're underexposed and you're bringing things up. So when you start brightening underexposed images, it causes more pixelization and noise. And if we're trying to look for a really clean image without noise in it, then I would rather overexpose slightly. So we're going to jump down here and I'm going to drop the highlights. So that's already brought the histogram down a little bit. I'm going to push the clarity up just to 30 again here. And let's see how the buildings are looking. It looks good and everything was nicely focused. I'm going to pull that dehaze up too just to get a little more color in there. So now we've got some greens down here that were flatter before. So this is starting to look nicer to me. Maybe just a little more vibrance. Let's see, we'll put that to 15. So that's all right, and it's a decent representation of the neighborhood. If you can't tell, there's a lot of construction going on here. So Prescott and Prescott Valley areas are expanding by the day. Also, this is a downward slope, but it throws me off a little bit. I think maybe I need to correct it a bit. I do want to show you one thing that is sometimes annoying when I'm using the Mavic Pro and not the Mavic Pro 2. Let's go down here. I'm going down to lens correction. So Lightroom allows you to correct for distortions in your lenses, be that a terrestrial camera or a flying camera. So I'm going to go in here and remove chromatic aberration, and I'm going to enable profile corrections. So it knows that it's the DJI, it's one of the DJI lenses. It knows that it's the DJI Mavic Pro FC220. So that's awesome. Right away, it actually knows the lens that I'm using, but I still feel like this is just off a little bit. And we can go into the transform and see what happens if we do this auto alignment. And I think, yeah, this is one of the examples. So oftentimes, and this happens to me only with the Mavic Pro, not the Mavic 2 Pro, there is something really not okay going on between our lens profile correction and our transformation here. So I'm going to turn that back off. So if I do feel like I need to fix this, I can do that manually. So I just wanted to tilt it ever so slightly. And I also need to constrain the crop so that I can see that cropped in. And I'm feeling like that is lined up a little better there. So, all right, just a minor edit with that transform. And the next thing that we're going to do again is we're going to go edit in Photoshop 2021. I also want to show you while we're here in the edit. So I also have edit in PT GUI. I also have edit with Aurora Hdr, Luminar 3, Luminar 2018. So as you can see, I do have other editors as well. So I'm going to hit that edit in Photoshop, and we're going to see, hey, what does that sky replacement do for us here? And then we're also going to make a miniature really quick just for fun. So get the little pinwheel going there. And like I said, this computer is feeling underpowered more and more when I'm running Lightroom, Photoshop, and OBS or Metashape or something. Things do slow down on this. I am very curious about Apple's new M1 chip, so they've actually got my attention again, and we'll talk about that in an upcoming live stream. But I was getting ready to move away from Apple, and they might have saved themselves a customer with the direction they're going with that new M1 chip. All right, so here we are again, and first things first, I'm just going to go and we're going to play with that sky replacement. Now, the reason why I'm so focused on the sky replacement, there's been a lot in the news lately about Luminar and Luminar AI and, artificial intelligence editing your photos. So, one of their big examples is, how much automation they're offering, and in one click, you can really clean up your images and stuff. And I've played with Luminar over the years, and I do have some thoughts on the latest version, which I'll talk about in just a few. I think this sky's looking a little too flat, by the way, so I'm going to go down and pick the richer cloud setup that we had here. And let's take a moment and see if that feels better to me, and it does. So overall, I'm liking the look of this, and right now, because we still kept this a little flat, I could go in here and punch the sky up even more. I could actually select the sky area itself, bang the saturation through the roof, but I don't think I want to do that. I think I want things to fit together kind of nicely. So the next thing that I'm going to do, like I said, I want to make some miniatures here. So let's go to the filters, and we're going to go down to the blur gallery. So if you've ever wanted to make something look like miniatures, like a miniature train set or roadways or cars on the roadways. This used to be tougher to do in Photoshop, so they didn't have a tilt shift effect. That effect came out a couple of years after I had started playing with that. But let's go ahead and do the tilt shift effect really quick. And so what you can see here, it's got the little pin right there for me. So we can actually select how far out we want the blur to go. And I'm feeling pretty good about that now. So we've got the blurred out areas in the background and the foreground, and we've got the tiny little cars in here. I'm going to say OK on the top bar, that yes, we do want to take that tilt shift right there. And now you can see, basically, we have miniaturized this neighborhood. So it's kind of adorable right now. The cute little cars that feel like miniatures, the cars in the driveways, the homes, and then the blur further out gives us that feeling that it's really a faked miniature. So this one I could actually pop right back in very easily now. And once again, at any time, let's say we're not satisfied with this, I can go up to my history here, and I can step back in the history of this image and go back to just the sky replacement so that we're not in the blur gallery. So I don't know if you noticed that change there. Let's go back down to the blur gallery. So there we go. We've got that miniaturized effect, but now let's go up to the sky replacement. So the thing that happened beforehand, and we are all set. I'm going to go back down to that blur gallery, and we're going to just quickly save this one as well. And that's going to save to Lightroom so that when we go back into Lightroom, we'll find that image. Now, because I'm saving these back as TIFF files, I could also be saving these back as Photoshop documents as well. And if I were to go in here and right click, I can go back to edit in, and I can edit with Adobe Photoshop again, and it's going to give me a couple of options. Edit a copy of this image with Lightroom adjustments, edit a copy period, or edit the original. Now, since we're looking at a TIFF file, if I edit the original, I'm going to be able to play with those layers that I created. So if you're working through the finalization of the image, you can bop back into that image very easily, and you can continue working on the layers that you've set up. So that's one of the really nice features with the integration between Lightroom and Photoshop, is the fact that I can go back in there, work on that layered image some more, tweak it a little more in Photoshop, then bring it back over to Lightroom. Now, once again, I don't know that I would do too much else with this one. I like this. This would be kind of a Great image for, let's say, doing a blog post about the growth in an area, showing the new build areas while showing the cute little homes and giving that tiny home shrunk down kind of feel. So I'm pretty satisfied with that one. Now, while we're looking at these, let me just hit the G button again. So here we go with the TIFF file. Actually, let's compare these two one more time, just for fun. And if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them up in the chat. So there we go. So on the right-hand side, we've got that raw file that we did a little bit of work to. You know, we just added a little color to it, give it just a little bit of pop. And then on the left-hand side, we do have that TIFF file with some of the bigger adjustments. So we got those clouds added in, and then we got the tilt shift effect. Boy, I can talk this morning. And that one's looking kind of nice to me. So let's take a look through and see what else we have. This is a painfully bland and drab one. You know exactly where the sun is in this one. And you can also see in the shadows cast. So this would be one that I would definitely not even show by a client at all, because the shadows are screaming, the sun's over here, the sun's over here. So even if we were to do some major editing to this, it's still not going to be something that you'd ever really want to share along. So remember, job number one in editing has nothing to do with Lightroom, and it has nothing to do with Photoshop. It has to do with you picking the best images that you shot for the day. So edit number one comes from your brain as to whether or not, do I use this image or do I not use this image? I mean, we can go into this, and I've seen some other photographers who will do great jobs with something this horrible. And, you know, if we just go in here, we'll drop the highlights down. And so we're pulling that back. Maybe even pull the exposure back just a little more. We'll go for that clarity again at about +30, and we'll bring that dehaze up. So definitely more color going on here. We've really gotten the blues to pop a little bit, and we could take that a little further with hue and saturation if we wanted to. So we could go down to the saturation sliders, or we could go to the individual hue, saturation, luminance, and let's just go in here and push the blues up. Whoa, talk about a faked sky, right? But somewhere between that blown out, not so vivid sky, maybe right in here. And let's check those aquas too. And we can also work around our greens, our yellows, so we can actually go in here with these sliders and make some sizable adjustments. And I mean, the adjustments that we've made here so far, you can really tell there is a big difference between these two images. So if I were to show something to anyone, it would be the image on the right with the minor edits. But once again, this one's just a little too much to work with. This is why when you're out shooting, you should make sure to get multiple shots of your locations. So if you have an idea and a pre-programmed flight path, and you're having the drone fly around a property, let's say, and so you're having it shoot from the corners, there are going to be moments where you're shooting into the sun, and when you're shooting into the sun, it's going to give you more problems with the edits. So I always do like to have my back to the sun when I'm doing standard photography. But in the drone work, sometimes we just have to showcase an area, and we're going to be shooting into the sun for part of that area. So a lot of the images that we do for raw land, we do have to do some fine tuning with the stuff afterward, especially when we're shooting in the direction of the sun. We've got this camera up in the air, so of course, you know, that sun is going to be everywhere for that lens. Let's take a look over at this one. So this could be another one that we have a little fun miniaturizing. And once again, you know, pretty drab image. So let's go into the develop module really quick, and let's go up to the top. Once again, I'm bringing those highlights down just to bring that sky down a little bit. You know, you could bring the whites down, but it's looking a little drab. And, you know, normally when I'm fine tuning things, it's 5 or 6 minutes, you know, if I've decided, hey, I do want to use this image. But oftentimes, you know, if I was doing a whole series here, this would be an image that I'd skip. But let's go down. We're going to push that clarity up again just a little bit. And you can always come back in and tone things down. So if you feel like you've gone over the top, it's okay, because you can easily come back in here and work with it a little more. So we'll do a little more vibrance here. And, you know, this could be a showing off the neighborhood kind of a feel. Once again, it's got a sloped angle to it. So I think this is something going on with the gimbal on the Mavic Pro, and that maybe I should recalibrate the gimbal today and just do a couple more tests for myself. Because I always do bring the Mavic Pro along just in case if I have problems with the Mavic 2 Pro. That way I've got a second camera with me. But so we'll do one more of these really fast. And while we're going through it, let's go ahead and do edit in Photoshop. So I wanted to talk about all of these other applications that are out there for photo editing. So I've used On1 for years. I used Topaz for years. I tried out Aurora Hdr. I also use Photomatic Pro. So I've got a lot of different software packages out there, and all of them offer something unique, okay? Including Photoshop offers some unique things. But to say that I'm only using one editor or another editor and it does everything for me is completely untrue. I have multiple tools that I'm using to get the results that I want for my clients. So I want you to have that in the back of your head here, because I get a lot of questions on YouTube. I get a lot of questions on my Patreon channel. And I've gotten questions from students on one of my Udemy courses for some basic drone photography editing. And sometimes people want that one stop for editing, and I get that. But these tools are often unique. So one of the new big things that everyone's been really super interested in is this whole sky replacement thing. So Luminar was one of the companies that brought the sky replacement to the forefront with one of their recent versions. So a lot of people are interested in being able to replace skies and replace other things as well. And so Luminar has been pushing their AI very, very heavily. And On1's been pushing some of their new features. And of course, Photoshop's been pushing some of their new features. And what I want you to understand as you're building your drone business is you're probably not just going to have Photoshop and Lightroom. You're probably going to have Photoshop and Lightroom and maybe Photomatics, maybe Aurora, maybe Luminar, maybe On1, maybe that Nikon suite, whatever, or maybe Affinity Photo. There are a lot of photo editing tools out there, and some of them are very strong, and some of them are kind of one-trick ponies. So with the advent of this new sky replacement, automatic sky replacement from Adobe, I think that Luminar is going to be getting a run for their money in the near future. And I use Luminar as the example because I actually use them as an editing example in one of my other classes for editing drone photos online. So, and you can see the links to all my classes below in the show notes here. So if you're interested in those courses, you can easily sign up for them. But I used Luminar as an example a couple years ago for one of my editing courses. And right now, I'm a little frustrated with Luminar, so Skylum and Luminar. They're bringing out their new AI feature, which is fantastic. But to be honest, they never completed Luminar 4. They never completed Luminar 3. And it's starting to tick me off. One of the things that Luminar and Skylum, the company, has been doing for quite some time is initially they said they were going to be a replacement for Lightroom. Oh, hey, there we go. Should have a pic into the sun to show how to edit that one. Yeah, Corey, those are tough. And, actually this image that I have up here right now, the sun is right up my left here. The sun is right up and in there. So that's part of what was kind of washing everything out as well. And actually, let's go ahead and select this one. So anyways, Luminar is coming out with Luminar AI, and I have not signed up for it. So supposedly they've got some more artificial intelligence features, even better sky replacement, and some other replacement features. That sounds really neat. But I signed up with them back at Luminar 2018 and then Luminar 3, and we were waiting for their digital asset management. So basically their version of Lightroom. So they had made some big promises just a couple of years ago that they were going to be doing a really high-end digital asset management where you could edit EXIF data, where all your information was there. You could search on multiple fields just like you can do in Lightroom. And in the end, that never happened with Luminar 3. They never got it there. They created a roadmap for getting there, but they didn't get there. Whenever they upgrade, whenever they create a new version of Luminar, they call it a new standalone thing. So it's not an upgrade to the last one. It's a whole new thing. One of their marketing techniques has been to say, unlike Adobe, you don't have to pay a regular subscription fee. So Adobe's charging $10 a month. So we've made the subscription fee the boogeyman. It's $120 a year to have Lightroom and Photoshop. And I think it's like $79 to get Luminar one time, but then the next version of Luminar you got to pay for again. Well, if they're coming out with a new one just about every year, and let's ratchet it down and call it $70 each, you're paying $140 a year for something. So, this whole getting away from the Adobe subscription thing turned out to kind of be dishonest in a marketing technique. So I wanted to do the Photoshop stuff to show you today that you can do sky replacement with Photoshop. So if you're interested in stuff like that, you don't have to go over to that Luminar. Hey, how you doing, Ray? Good to see you this morning. Doing okay. Feeling very well rested after the long weekend, and excited to get into the new projects that we've got going this week. So, excuse me. So always good to have you on channel. Good to see you, Ray. So anyways, we can do these edits with Photoshop. And yes, we could do sky replacement and some other really cool stuff in Luminar AI, but I'm no longer going to give those folks my money right now because Luminar 2018 and then Luminar 3, getting into Luminar 3, they didn't ever develop that digital asset management very well at all. They moved on to Luminar 4 and Luminar 4 with its sky replacements and a couple other things, and they still didn't get the digital asset management. So I paid twice for this program where I was supposed to have something comparable to Lightroom, and it never came to pass. And instead of addressing it, they just move on to the next version. So now we're coming up on Luminar AI. Once again, it's not going to have the digital asset management. So they keep promising some things and then not delivering them. And in the meantime, they keep talking about the boogeyman that is Adobe with subscriptions. $120 a year. Compared to what you're spending on the rest of the equipment in your drone business, should be a drop in the bucket. Because between our computers, our drones, all the other software that we're getting, if we're considering 3D modeling software that costs us $3,500 a year for licensing, Adobe's $10 a month is okay and doable. All right, so I saved that one, I closed that one up, but I wanted to give you guys a heads up. So I'm not telling you not to go out and buy Luminar, but I am saying I've been getting so many emails from them. I've unsubscribed from all their list. I still keep getting the emails. And my disappointment is that they did make a promise to their customers at Luminar 3 with the digital asset management that they never finished off. They created a roadmap to get there, and that roadmap has disappeared from their webpage. So now that they're far enough away from Luminar 3 to where they went to Luminar 4, and now they're at Luminar AI, they're not really supporting Luminar 3 anymore. And they never fixed some of the big problems. And same with Luminar 4. I've read around for a lot of folks, and those folks have also complained that, they never followed up and fixed those issues. Now, what I can tell you with Adobe Lightroom and Adobe Photoshop, I've been using the Adobe suites since 2002. And they do give you upgrades in between. And, now that it's a subscription model, you're always up to date with their latest. And when you have issues and you submit issues to them, they do actually address those issues. So I'm not selling Photoshop. I'm not selling Lightroom. I don't get any cut of the business off of these conversations. But I'm trying to help other drone pilots. You need to build your businesses. You want to be able to do some of the editing for your clients. And I've just got to say that these are two incredibly powerful tools. If you run out and get Luminar AI, I'd love to see some of the things you create with it. And maybe we'll find out that they'll get that digital asset management out sooner rather than later. But at this point, after a couple of years, I'm done waiting for it. And I'm just going to stick with my mainstays that have worked well for me for so long. Now, when we looked in here before we wrap up today, you also saw some other things. Edit in PT GUI. So when I do 360 models, I'm using PT GUI for stitching some of those models together. So that is a standalone software package that I think cost $179. That was a birthday present a couple of years ago, so not sure of the price exactly. I can also edit in Aurora Hdr, which is a decent HDR program from the guys at Skylum. But one of the weird things was I couldn't export from Luminar to Aurora, even though they were made by the same company. So that was frustrating as well. So there's my Luminar 3, by the way, and my Luminar 2018. So occasionally I will jump over to them, and I'm thinking about subscribing again with On1 as well, because I always like the On1 photo tool suite. By the way, I have had people ask me multiple times on channel about Affinity Photo. I did do their trial period, and it is a nice photo program. So if you just want to pay one time and not be paying anymore afterward, for a pretty basic and easy to understand photo editing program, Affinity might be a way to go as well. So in the end, it's up to you. It's your tastes and preferences. But for me, Lightroom has been just a powerhouse since, 2007, 2008, for managing tens of thousands of images over the years. All right, I'm going to hit that G key again. So we're done with the bland photos, and once again, they were purposefully bland photos. I hope this video today helped you get some ideas of how much you can recover something from that boring, bland image to something that's a little more. And I'm just seeing those clouds off in the distance. Since I'm doing this quickly, I'm not perfecting this, but I might play with this one a little later today because I've got an idea of where I could use that on the AZ Drone website. All right, everyone, I hope you all had a fantastic holiday weekend as well. Like I said, finally fully rested, so I actually overslept this morning and was almost late to this, so but I wasn't late. So there we go. All right, I'm not sure what we're going to be covering next week. For the rest of this week, I'm actually working with one of my web clients, so the week's going to be dedicated to doing more website updates, new pages, homes for sale, and a couple other things for them. So the week is going to be pretty well occupied. By the way, for all the folks on my Patreon channel, just to let you know, the newest course that we haven't released yet, the newest course has several new videos in it. So if you haven't already popped over since this weekend, there are several new videos on online outreach for your drone business, and also a couple videos on the equipment used while in the field. So I think there's 5 or 6 new videos in there for you now. So if you guys can go in and check those out, let me know if there's any problems or anything. And the class is going to be getting launched before the end of 2020, I promise. Just wanted as much there as possible. One of the other things you should keep in mind with that class is going to continue growing forward. So it's a course on what to do after you got your Part 107 license and how to start building your small drone business. So for the folks on my Patreon channel, they have been getting some of this content for free for a bit in exchange for basically being beta testers for me. So thanks, everybody. Hey, John Appel, good morning. I saw his message retracted. Oh, okay. I never knew that happened. But good morning to you, John. I hope you're doing well as well. All right, everyone. So once again, for the Patreons, head on over to the Teachable platform if you signed up for that access, and take a watch and let me know what you think. And with that, we'll wrap up the live stream. I hope you all have a great start to the week, and we'll see you again next week.